Hello, everyone's Post Focus as Nottingham Forest make it through to the FA Cup fifth round at the 11th hour by beating League One side Exeter City on penalties last night. We'll discuss the key players and talking points from that game and turn our attention to Fulham in the Premier League next in the company of, first of all, Michael Temple. Temps, good morning. Did you log off at any point or you just stay on the whole time?
I've had a shower, freshen up, I'll put a collar on for you. But yeah, apart from that, I don't think my thoughts have changed too much from last night, to be honest, Matthew.
Well, we'll hear more. We'll expand on what we discussed last night until just before midnight. So if you joined us last night and you're joining us today, we're not live, you're a hero. So good to have you with us. Pete Blackburn, good morning.
Morning, how you doing?
Tired? Good. Got to sleep at 2. I was emailing you and the other lads at 1:30 in the morning with today's talking points and links. So pretty tired, but good.
I'm feeling a little bit fresher than you, sending your posts out at 1:30 to us, and Temps who clearly slept in this stream, and all the guys who, I guess, got back at 3, 4 or 5 a.m. overnight after representing us so well down the South Coast.
Yeah, well done to the away fans. I think I saw one of the lads, post the route planner saying 4 hours, 30 minutes, and that was about 12:15. So well done to them. Good effort. Garry Birtles, Reds legend, how are you?
Well, yes, it really messed my TV up last night. I was hoping to catch up on Unforgotten, but had to carry on watching.
Lovely start. Good to have you with us, Garry.
The human cost of football there.
Yeah, the unforeseen domino effect of TV listings. Pete, kick us off, just some general thoughts, and we'll get into some specifics with Garry and Temps.
Well, I guess at half-time it felt like we were cruising towards a pretty positive night. Obviously a really dodgy moment to start things off and concede, but didn't seem massively fazed by that. I thought the players reacted quite well, as Nuno said, especially given, it's not necessarily an easy occasion, is it? A home crowd who are really up for it. I thought they were brilliant. Difficult pitch, odd circumstances for these Premier League players and such like. But it looked like it was going to be pretty professional. Taiwo was looking very bright. Sangare was doing well. At that point, the game hadn't been particularly feisty and no great damage done to anyone. And it looked like sort of smooth progress. But things unravelled pretty quickly after the second half. It certainly did get a bit more feisty, sort of worrying moments over Anderson, obviously Taiwo, Morgan Gibbs-White, and the performance sort of fell apart somewhat too. And now I guess we're looking at a post-match pod where we're talking about the futures of various players and whether they can be trusted to play next round and all that sort of stuff. So certainly swung somewhat. I guess it's worth having a little bit of perspective. I mean, we probably could have put that game to bed a lot more easily than we did. We had a lot of chance. I think 31 shots, 2.5 xG, all that sort of stuff. So I think it could have been a different story, but clearly not a great performance. But at least it's not Chester or Oldham again. We've had some pretty bleak cup moments in the relatively recent past, haven't we? So we're through sort of unscathed-ish, and hopefully living to fight another day.
I think Garry on Friday, Brian Laws was on, and he said he thought Nuno would learn a lot about players playing on, a rough pitch, a League One ground, a good atmosphere. Exeter really fronted up and played well. What do you think Nuno will take from that? Will he take a lot, or will he view it as a game in isolation that we just got through?
I think you've got to give Nuno a bit of credit, really, because you look at the Liverpool game against Plymouth. They left Liverpool, a lot of their key players at home, so they didn't have any explosion to come from the bench, whereas we needed that, and he kept our, big guns on the bench. Didn't really want to play them, but recognised that they had to come at some point, and they made a difference. But let's give Exeter some credit here. I listened to their manager saying, our game plan was sit deep and counter-attack to nullify our counter-attacking game. And I thought their professionalism in the way they went around about the game, about nullifying us, was incredibly good. I think their pressing was good. They didn't allow us any time on the ball. They let us have it in areas that didn't really hurt them. And I think, really, first half, we bounced back well, and that was good to see that. But I think our decision-making in and around the area wasn't particularly good all through the game. We sort of great little passes. There was some, the run for the goal, the first one, Sosa, was tremendous, and the delivery was great. But we didn't see a lot of that afterwards. And, you can see Exeter, they've conceded 13 in the last 3 games. They got beat 6-2 at home by Orient. They lost to Blackpool. they're struggling in the league, but they conjured up a performance, and that's what the FA Cup does. It's still important to teams like Exeter. Not so much because Liverpool, they're out because they changed 11, we changed 10, and you can come unstuck. But we got through it, and it'll be interesting to see the team selection for the Ipswich game.
Just looking at match stats, we had 78% of the ball. Are we just bad with the ball, Gary? Before I come to Temps, we normally have like 30%, don't we?
We're good with the ball. With the first 11. Like I said, I think it's what we did with the ball or didn't do with it when we had it in good areas. Chris Wood came on. He had that header at the end where the keeper saved. I'm trying to think how many brilliant saves their keeper made. He made the fabulous one from Awoniyi in the first half where he just palmed it around the post. But apart from that, it's pretty comfortable for him. I'm sure Nuno will have taken a lot from what he saw from the players who came in to prove a point to him, hopefully, to push for a place in the Premier. And I'm not sure that many of them did that last night.
Who did, Temps, do you think? If you were picking out any players that really pushed their case, is there anyone?
Ibrahim Sangare, albeit against limited opposition in difficult circumstances on a Sunday morning potato field of a pitch. I think that we saw the poise and the passing and the vision that he can have when he's at his absolute best. He started the season in our Premier League team. He's had 2 years now absolutely destroyed by injury, illness, AFCON, just never quite been able to get himself going at Forest. But there's a player in there. I think we saw sparks of it last night, albeit against limited opposition, as the commenters rightly say. But I think Ibrahim Sangare offers something a little bit different to the guys on the side, and he'll break in between now and the end of the season.
He does offer something different, Pete. How much can we take from a game in the first half where, talk about playing with a cigar on. He did very well, but he had all the space he needed. I'm a fan of his, but I'm sort of loath to say, yes, throw him into the Premier League team based on that, even though you can only play what's in front of you.
Yeah, I'm going to be slightly contrary on Sangare, I think. I don't think we learned anything from last night about him. I don't think his technical ability has ever been in doubt. We know he's a player with real ability. He can progress the ball. He can carry the ball as well, which we didn't see last night, but I think he had the most progressive passes on the pitch last night. And, clearly both the goals were in large part down to him finding passes that split their defence and midfield. But it's worth saying that not only did he have acres of space to play them, but there wasn't even anyone close enough to even think about influencing what he was doing. He is never going to have that sort of time and space in the Premier League. And what we know about Sangare, I think, is, as I say, is that he's got those technical qualities, and we know that he's a player of real ability. He's shown that on the continent. What we don't know about him is whether he can. Well, firstly, the injuries are obviously a huge problem. Secondly, can he handle the pace and intensity of the Premier League? When he's played, he hasn't been able to. The game has gone past him. Granted, there are circumstances and there context around his fitness, the sickness, all that sort of stuff, and I really hope he can come good. But I personally don't think we can take lessons from this game, and I really don't think that you can consider putting him in a Premier League 11 based on what we saw tonight. Particular, I just don't think any of what happened for him tonight, apart from minutes, which are obviously really important, is transferable to a Premier League game where he's going to have people around him all the time. He's never going to be able to play those passes in that sort of space. And also, I think we saw on a few occasions players galloping past him and him not being able to have an impact, which we have also seen when he's played in the Premier League. We need him to be really sharp, really fit, and capable of having an athletic impact on the game. That's when Sangare could come in and be a game changer for us, because we know he's got the qualities to then be able to use the ball and such like. At the moment, I think he's still going to be a distance off that. But if I'm proved wrong, then great, because I think he would make a big difference to us if we did have him at his best.
Where do you think he fits into the puzzle, Gary?
I don't think he fits in at the moment because of what we're seeing from the players in those positions at the moment in the Premier League. We saw signs again of what he can do, what he is capable of, albeit against a first division team. a League One team. One thing that concerned me again last night was the fact that we didn't look dangerous from set pieces, but every time they had set pieces, we looked in trouble. You know, they were winning balls in the air. I mean, the goalkeepers, I think, at fault for both of them. And every time the ball came in our box, I thought, oh, you know, that shows how important Milenkovic and Murillo are. You know, so if those two, you know, do get injured, you just worry a little bit when somebody else is going to come in and maybe, you know, they can be exploited, because this was a League One team who are in the bottom half of their league on a really bad run. And at times they made us look ordinary. They were the better side a lot of the time, even with 10 men at times. You know, they look dangerous. And we just, when you play against 10 men, you have to be patient. You have to do things differently. And I don't think we did that. I think we just kept banging the ball in the box. I'm all for early delivery, but not every time from every sort of area. They felt quite comfortable with what we were throwing at them in that respect. But, hey, the scoreline says Nottingham Forest through to the next round of the FA Cup, Ipswich at home. That's all that matters in the end. Nothing else. You have to look and pick through the bones, and Nuno will do that. It was a really good insight for him to see what he's got in reserve if things go a little bit bad, people get injured, and, you know, he might be scratching his head a little bit.
I think so. I mean, I'd tell Eric da Silva Moreira he's not allowed to shoot again for a while against 10 men. That was
certainly not from 40 yards.
No, certainly not. No. Let's talk more about Carlos Miguel then. I mean, I don't think he was at fault for the second goal, but he didn't spread any confidence or have any authority, and it was a really bad night for him. This question is going to sound like I'm writing him off as a goalie, and I'm not, because I'm sure there's a keeper in there. But I suppose, Temps, the question is, if he doesn't play against Ipswich, do you think he potentially doesn't play for Forest again? Because there's a chance either we sign a keeper or we loan him out in the summer.
As a goalie, you've got to have confidence in yourself, and you've got to engender confidence from your teammates. I think Matt Sells has done that fantastically well this season. In the main, Brice Samba did that. There have been several notable rock-solid keepers between the six for Forest over the years. Sadly, Carlos Miguel isn't one of them. I do think that Matt Sells comes into the side for the Ipswich tie now, because we can sniff the part of the competition which we're reaching, and we've got a real credible chance of having an impact. So that would impact team selection. If he'd have had a solid performance in this game, and there was no reason why he shouldn't have going into it, I think we were relatively happy with his performance against Newcastle and earlier cup rounds this year. Then it would have been his jersey. He'd have been the cup keeper this year, and that's the way it would have ran. But when you're dropping a cross which hasn't been whipped with any particular venom, when you're not under any real physical pressure from the opposition, questions are going to be asked. Your own confidence drops, and the confidence of those around you diminishes as well. The second goal wasn't his fault. It was a wild deflection off Willy Bolly, but he did palm the first shot back into the traffic. He didn't deal with that as well as he might. So quite rightly, people are asking questions. Fathers said last night, maybe Wayne Hennessy comes up the pecking order now. He might be the number two. I think that's probably a bit of a leap. But in any game that we pick our best 11, Carlos Miguel has found himself further down the pecking order. The gulf between him and Sells is massive, and I think he may have made his last start for Forest.
Just before I come to this question that James has asked anyway, I do feel a bit of sympathy for Carlos Miguel. All he does is train. He came from Brazil, having played very little football for a 25-year-old. We don't play players in the reserves, the B team. No one does. Surely, would it have been better to get him 3 or 4 games, or even the game before this one, Garry, for the B team to get some minutes?
Well, this has been my beef for years. I mean, we had the Central League years ago, which was so beneficial for players who were coming back from injury. You played against really class opposition. You played on your own pitch. You didn't play on, university pitches or whatever. And it was a battle. You were playing against hardened professionals, and it was a regional thing as well. It was Central League North, South. So you didn't do a great deal of travelling. And it gave everybody the opportunity, young players coming through, to mix it with, older professionals. And now it's, what is it? The under-21s, the under-23s, how are they going to, anybody who doesn't play, it's not going to do them any good. It's crying out for something that will help everybody in every league, grow and learn and be able to get back from fitness against players they're used to playing in. If Gibbs White got injured or Chris Wood got injured, they've got to come through the same thing again, train, play with the under-21s or 23s. And it's not, the greatest standard of football, and you don't play on the main pitches anymore. So I'm surprised that's not been looked at again, but I don't think it ever will be, but I think it should be. And I know how important game time is, no matter what position you play. If you play any other game apart from the first team at that level, you're going to be struggling a little bit. If you're out from injury, you take your time coming back. And, the Central League, that's what it gave you, because, the rigmarole of those games was more or less like playing a game on a Saturday, in the league. It gave you that balance to get back in there and, prove that you were worthy of getting back in the first team. So it is difficult. I've got great sympathy with players who don't play and can only train. You can train as much as you like. It won't make you any better when you go. If you've not played for 6-7 games or whatever, and you go in the first team, you're off the pace. And we know the pace of the Premier League is the fastest in the world. It's a difficult league to get used to. And but what can you do? There's nothing else. You've got no options.
It was certainly a tough old job being a keeper, and it was a tough night for him. I mean, he made that one error, Pete, which was really bad. I think going off with a hamstring injury really exemplified and puts the spotlight on him. I mean, there's people in the chat questioning whether he bottled it, and I don't think we could throw that allegation at him, because we just don't know really what goes on inside someone's head. But like I say, tough being a keeper, tough getting limited minutes, but it's a testing moment for him in his Forest career, I guess, now, isn't it?
Yeah, but he obviously need more opportunities to play to be able to put that right, and whether they happen or not is, a different matter.
Sorry to interrupt. Would you loan him out in the summer then to Rio Ave, or I don't know if you get in the Olympiacos team, loan him out somewhere where he's going to be a regular?
I think Forest will continue looking for another goalkeeper, so I suspect that is what will happen. Yeah, I mean, I think it says a lot that when we signed Carlos Miguel, I think it's pretty clear that the club was still out and about looking for other goalkeepers to sort of complete that part of the pitch. I don't think it's going to be realistic to see him as a contender to take Matt Sells' spot anytime soon. And obviously the confidence in him being a number two, who ultimately is someone who you have to have step in when they're not playing football and do what he did last night, is going to be withered away somewhat by what happened. I mean, I really feel for him, because it's all like it's tiny moments, isn't it? He obviously makes an absolute howler, but I'm sure if James Belshaw was on, he'd say, look, the truth is that all keepers are going to do that at some point, because it's just the nature of the game, isn't it? At some point you're going to have an absolute mare and just drop a ball, and it's going to look horrific. And when you do that as a keeper, it's desperately bad, isn't it? It couldn't come with much worse consequences as a footballer. And I think we suddenly then view everything else through that lens. So we look at the second goal, and I think Matt Sells could have made exactly the same save and had exactly the same impact in that moment, and we wouldn't talk about it at all. Granted, he's sort of, it looks like he's patted it back into the danger area, but it's a proper reaction save, lots and lots of bodies around. Initially, I thought, look, he just looks like he's not really having any impact whatsoever in that moment. But I think we have to ask ourselves how much of that criticism is just because of what we've already seen from him in the game. So I think without the mistake, it would have been fine, just like all of his other appearances have been just fine. Nothing to particularly write home about, but nothing to be desperately concerned about. But you have these moments, and it does change narratives, and it's hard to feel desperately confident about him right now, isn't it? Let's face it.
Yeah, I mean, if he'd had a steady 7 out of 10 game, we wouldn't be talking about him, and he'd just be our number two. It's about projecting confidence, I suppose, Temps, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, keepers have to have a swagger. I don't think Sells sort of does in a way. Like we mentioned this last night, in the shootout, he had a swagger about him, and I was very confident in him. And probably for whatever reason, Miguel probably lacks that at the moment. Is that fair?
I'm just happy with debating the backup keeper, because there's absolutely no doubt about our number one. despite him having, there was a little bit of a settling in period for Matt Sells. January signing, didn't come for much money, didn't know too much about him, all the rest of it. He's proved beyond doubt that he can live at this level. He can be in a team that's in the mix for a European place. So we're debating a backup keeper. Why do you rest your number one keeper in the early rounds of the Cup? Nothing other than wanting to get some minutes into the guy that's a professional football trainer, the point that you made there, Matt. But Matt Sells can play 60 games a year more readily than any other member of the squad and excel. I love the fact he's understated. I still think he's got that little bit of gamesmanship. He's not going to waste a minute and 30 taking a goal kick like Bree Samba would, but he was kicking his post last night, making the opposition wait. And fair play to Magennis, who's the top scorer in the FA Cup this year. He was cool, waited a long time. But Matt Sells, reflexes, shot stopping, and an element of gamesmanship and mind games was the decisive factor in getting us through that shootout last night. Full confidence in Matt Sells.
Say something regarding goalkeepers coming in. It's far easier for a goalkeeper to come in than it's an outfield player, because goalkeepers work really hard in training. They go in the middle of a circle, they get balls played at them at different angles, different pace. They go through all that. So it's no real difference for them coming in, I don't think. I played in goal for South Notts Boys. I was the reserve goalkeeper. By the way, we lost. Then I only let one in. The other guy let 9 in. It's easier for a goalkeeper to come in because he's not going to run anywhere. He's got to just save it. He's got to be confident. He's got to take the pressure off his defenders. He's 6'8". He should be doing that a little bit better, maybe. So I think I used to watch Shilton train the other goalkeepers, and it was fantastic to watch because they got so much out of it. When Chris Woods was there, Steve Sutton's and people like that, and it's so important to do that right. So they do get unbelievably well trained on a daily basis. So maybe you can give him a little bit more stick for what he did, because they don't have as much to do as an outfield player.
I was really hoping Gary was going to say I once played in goal for Grimsby there in some little forgotten incident that I hadn't heard about before.
The fish and chips there, that was it. The best.
Right. We'll move on to Taiwo next, because he thought he had obviously a very mixed night. I thought he played well, but we'll talk about his injury. Thank you very much to Renovate Great. I guess that's a company name, for signing up for membership. Very much appreciate that. There's 440 people with us, so do us a favour and hit like if you haven't already. Makes a big difference. And thank you very much to the Trent Navigation. Loads of gigs coming up, including ABBA Fever on the 20th of May from 7 p.m. till 10:30 p.m. Click on or scan the QR code if you're watching on YouTube, or just go to gigantic.com for tickets. And if you search Trent Nav, you'll see they've got loads of good stuff coming up gigs wise, and we'll tell you about those as we go along in the next few days. Is that up your street, Gary? ABBA Fever?
I do like a bit of ABBA, I must admit. As you know, I'm a little bit of a heavy metal, not all. I like Green Day and people like that. I went to, so, but I just love ABBA for some reason. There's just something about them. I've seen Mamma Mia about 19 times. It's something about them. It's like the Bee Gees. They're different. There's nobody else sounds like them. And yeah.
We're getting the information I did not expect to get today, which is why I enjoy doing this around the world of Garry Birtles.
But I do like a bit of ABBA, I must admit.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Right, let's talk about Taiwo. We'll talk about his performance first, and we'll do a bit on his injury. In fact, actually, I'll do an update on his injury first. He suffered a broken nose, and I think the club have confirmed he had a concussion as well. A sports doctor who I talked with on Twitter, I think he used to work in rugby, says concussion is 12 days out minimum. That's the protocol. A nasal fracture is 4 to 6 weeks to heal. But obviously, he can wear a face mask, so that shouldn't impact him much, or if at all, in game time. But he'll probably miss 12 days at the minimum before he's allowed to return. Apparently, according to the average Joe, it's supposed to be 21 days before you resume normal life, which is a bit weird because I'm not going for a 50-50 with the person that's the checkout in Sainsbury's or anything like that. So, yeah, I didn't understand that. Right, let's talk about Taiwo. His performance, Gary, just focusing on that. I thought he was very good. What did you make of it?
I think he did all right. It's like I say, it's difficult for him because last season he was the main man. This season, Chris Wood's the main man. So he's not had much game time. You see him, warming up with about half an hour to go, and then he gets about 5 or 10 minutes. And I know how difficult it is as a striker coming on in a game or not. How difficult it is. I was out for 7 months when I had my spinal fusion. So when I came back, it was so difficult to get back in. When I was at Man United, I had a stress fracture of the pubic bone, and you couldn't do anything. And you lose those couple of weeks, and it's difficult to catch up no matter how fit you are. I mean, I was one of the fittest players around at that particular point. I love running. I could run forever, but it was still difficult to get that pace, get back in the game. And for any outfield player, I think that is, a similar problem. I think Danilo, when he first came back, we saw, it was a little bit difficult for him. The pace of the, your awareness has got to be switched on a little bit more. But he's gradually getting back into it, which is really good to see. So I think Taiwo did okay. I think his finish was top class. I don't think they gave him enough credit for it, the commentary team last night, saying, the defenders made it easy for him. Hold on a minute. His touch was good. What he did after that was good, and his finish was exemplary. So, I don't disagree with Ali McCoist a great deal, but I thought it was a class finish, and he could have had the other one where the keeper's made that terrific save. He's a handful, and he will continue to be a handful. But with Chris in the form he's at the moment, he's just got to sit back and be on the bench and do his best when he comes on.
Guys, you can't expect us to let that comment slide. Stress fracture of the pubic bone. How does something like that come about? Where do I sign up?
Called synthesis pubis. Ray Wilkins had it when I went to Man United, and you do nothing you do yourself. It just comes on. Ray had it, and all you can do, you can't drive, you can't do anything. All you can do is walk. You can't even drive a car. It has to heal itself, and the time it takes to heal itself is different to everybody else. So, that's when I missed out about, 3 months. It didn't get any pre-season training. So, it's just one of those things that heals itself, and it's a pain really because you can't do anything about it.
Let's talk about his performance a bit more. Temps. He had a bit of a confidence about him. Like his hold-up play was really good, but he took on shots from outside the box. That was probably what encouraged me most. What about you?
Yeah, he did. When the ball was in the air, he fought for his space. He owned his ground. He controlled his defender. I thought he looked lively. And some of the best moments we've seen from Taiwo are that when he battles with his man to bring the ball out of the sky, either brings another player into play or tries to find a way to turn and get at the defenders. So I think he was the horse for the course first half. And I think that he was effective, took his goal superbly well. It's not that often we see him create the chance for himself, had to get out of the traffic and find the space for the shot, and caught it really cleanly, nestled into the bottom corner. We're far more used to seeing one-touch finishes from Taiwo, and obviously the occasional run from slightly deeper. So I think he did himself a lot of credit first half. You're beginning to really feel for him in the sense that he has been somewhat unlucky during his time at Forest with the timings of these injuries, with the explosion of Chris Wood into what he's become this season. But I think there's a collective willingness from Forest fans to want Taiwo to do well. Such a likeable character, such a big player in our survival in our first 2 seasons in the Premier League. So there's a real affinity for him, and we want to see him play his way back into contention on form. First half yesterday was a sign of real promise, and I hope this injury doesn't disrupt him too much.
Commentary team exactly the same, didn't they? They said when Taiwo scores, the whole team are just so delighted for him. There's a real genuine love of Taiwo, and when he scores, they're just so pleased for him because he's a genuine lad. He's an honest player out there, and when we've seen him at his best, he's a difficult striker to mark and to stop. He's strong, he's got good movement, and when he's fully fit, he is a handful. And just hope he gets himself back to fitness quickly, so Chris has got that backup if need be.
I mean, he's very unlucky, Pete. I suppose the one, if you can have a silver lining of a concussion and a broken nose, it's probably not the kind of injury that's going to set him back like groin surgery or a hamstring where you're going to need 5 or 6 games to get back into it. Hopefully this is just a 2-week blip and he can resume and try and build some momentum, in towards the end of the season, hopefully, can't he?
Yeah, fingers crossed. I mean, it's not the sort of injury that's going to mean that he loses a lot of conditioning, is it? It's not a great deal time out, and fingers crossed that will mean that he can carry on sort of building from where he is. I thought he was comfortably the sort of the most positive thing about the evening for me, from a Forest point of view. It's really reassuring to see that he's still got. I mean, we know that he's still got that desire to bully defenders and put his body in those sort of moments of competition, as has led to his injury. And he's always going to be relatively effective because he does that, because defenders don't like it. We've seen him bully Premier League defenders, not just with pace, but with that sheer strength and willingness to have that fight. But it was just really reassuring to see that he's still got that desire to get the shots off, the instinct, and then the way he delivered. He could have had 2, couldn't he, if not for a brilliant save from the baby-faced Exeter keeper. So yeah, I thought it was a great positive. It's really sad that the way that the night ended for him, albeit I guess a pretty massive relief in a sense, to be honest, because it looked at the time like something pretty horrible might have happened for a good while. Obviously there was the sort of images of him, and it felt like hopefully he was just in a bit of shock and such like, but there was a worry for a little while, such a long period of time as well. You're really concerned that something properly serious has happened. So fingers crossed it looks like that's not the case. And I mean, it's a huge boost for us, I think, seeing that there's still a Taiwo there who has that instinct, the desire to get the ball, the touches were decent to get out of his feet, and then the finish was class for the goal, and it's a good effort for the other chance as well. So I mean, I think that bodes really well. I'm obviously a big Taiwo fan, and I've not given up on him, but I think it's really reassuring to know that he's still got lots of those attributes.
Don't go to what's going on, isn't it? You think there's something more sinister going on, and the cameras didn't go anywhere near, which was good. And you're thinking, oh no, what's happened? We saw the blood coming, from his nose, and we thought, well, if it's only a bloody nose, but then it lasted that long, and you just, you're thinking, whoa, what else has happened? Luckily, nothing else had happened. But I think the big worry for Nuno, and I would have thought he'd have been annoyed a little bit, was having to bring Elliot Anderson on, having to bring Morgan Gibbs-White on. Chris had to come on because Taiwo had gone off. But, he wouldn't have wanted to bring those on. Normally he would have expected maybe the game to be, out of sight a little bit with their current form, Exeter, but it wasn't. And then we saw that horrible challenge on Gibbs-White, which was a deserved red card. And we saw Elliot Anderson, as soon as he came on, he was struggling. You thought, well, if those two get injured, and they're going to be out. And I think that would have annoyed Nuno a little bit, and rightly so, because, the other players who were in the positions last night to prove a point, I don't think really, did that a great deal. Sosa, we saw his petulance again Jota, so his petulance again at times, where he gets annoyed with himself and gives stupid fouls away. If they go collective and, you're 4 or 5, you could be in trouble. So I really think it was an opportunity for some players to say, right, I'm going to show you, Nuno, and it didn't quite happen for them.
Let's talk about the wingers. I want to talk about the wingers. I want to talk about the fullbacks before we finish on the game. I mean, I don't really think either played very well. I know Sosa's getting a lot more love than Jota, and I think I agree with that. I thought Jota had a really rough night, but still question marks against both in the longer term. But I do think Sosa definitely has a higher ceiling. Where are you at? Let's start with Jota. Where are you at on Jota, Temps?
Jota Silva has impressed me in moments, but when I've watched him for any long period of time, he's looked particularly unstructured and at times overcommitted, trying to get everywhere and impact moments in the game less than he might if he was a bit more selective along the lines of Callum Hudson-Odoi and Anthony Elanga, obviously, who drift in and out. What I mean by that, there's times late in games when he's come on and he's sold a dummy and overcommits to trying to block a cross, whatever, finds himself beaten. Then there's performances like Luton at home, where his energy and his spark and his aggression is there for all to see. I think the gulf between the starting wingers, Alanga and Hudson-Odoi, and the backup in Sosa and Jota Silva is an absolute gulf. And as we've said before on here, that's the difference between a £50 million player and a £15 million player. Of course, they've got something. Of course, they've got attributes that get them on the park, but they're not able to impact a game in the way that the elite are. What I didn't like last night was the theatrics. I think there were moments when he was playing in that traditional continental style of the precious winger wanting to roll around at times rather than get stuck in and really try and affect the game by being, hard and effective and direct, and just do what you're there to do, to stretch their defensive line, to be an active runner. Yes, of course, to assist with defensive duties when you need to, but his decision making wasn't quite there, and that was one of his lesser performances. And I think, despite having been consistently selected above Sosa by Nuno to this point, probably the game in which Sosa just eased past him when there is that need to call on someone other than Callum Hudson-Odoi or Anthony Alanga. So I was up on Silva relative to Sosa before this game for that industry and that endeavour, and I just hope something would drop for him. Having watched him play 10-15 times for Forest now, I'm more excited about Sosa.
Yeah, I think Sosa's got that extra quality. Like, he took his goal well. Obviously, we questioned the keeper, but then there's things like, obviously it was criminal not playing Gibbs White in late in the game. But I think Sosa's got long-term potential. So I didn't want to sound overly harsh on him there. Thank you very much to Michelle Morgan for signing up for membership, by the way. Very much appreciate that, Michelle, and anyone else who's signed up of late. What about you on the wingers, Pete?
Right, I'll try and be balanced and not too reactive, I guess, to what we saw. I think both of them are massively flawed, but both of them have potential that they can have an impact, and we've seen good moments. I guess Jota, my first take on Jota is I just don't think he's a winger. I don't see how he can have an impact for us playing wide on the right when he doesn't have the pace or the trickery to beat his opposition man. It looks to me like he's a player who could have a role centrally, and we've seen him when he comes on against good Premier League teams. We've seen him cause problems because he's frankly just a real pain in the arse, isn't he? People don't like playing against him. He puts himself about. I think that's been a real upside for him, but it also perhaps there's a little downside to that now because it just looks like he's trying so hard to have an impact that he's sort of lost his head a little bit, I think. The real downside for him is, as I see it now, is the histrionics and the diving around is just embarrassing. I thought it was horrendous last night. I think that he can have an impact for us. I think it has to be centrally. I don't see him playing a particular role out wide right in an attacking sense, apart from perhaps he can be an option for nullifying a opposition strength. But can you trust him to do that at the moment with the way that he's sort of diving into everything? And I think he just needs to calm down somewhat. The big issue we've got with both of them is that we talk about them like they're 19-year-old wingers, and both of them are mid-20s. Are they both 25? 24, 25? But yeah, I guess the thing with them is that they've not played much football at this sort of level, perhaps not an awful lot of football in general. So there was obviously room to develop, and there are raw strengths with both of them. But I think both suffer from really poor decision-making. We saw that obviously massively with Sosa last night, and I think we always see it with him. The upside with Sosa is that he looks like a proper goal scorer, right? He's always, his movement's good. I think his finishing's pretty good. You remember that Everton game, he had quite a few moments where he was cutting in and causing problems, and maybe he was a little bit rusty, so the shooting wasn't doing the sort of damage that you might hope. But he's also really good at drifting into that space in the box. He can be a bit of a poacher for you at the far post, all that sort of stuff. So I do think they've both got strengths. At the moment, I'm not high on either of them having a big long-term impact for Forest, but I'm hopeful that, with a bit more game time, with settling into the country, all that sort of stuff, I'm hopeful that they can keep improving. As things stand, I think, Temps is bang on. We've got two very, very good wingers for the level, and these two, as things stand, are quite a long way off that. And also, I don't know if this is damning because it's just me saying it, but even if I'm choosing a 4-2-3-1 now, I'm probably considering whether I can play Anderson or Dominguez or someone else in one of those wide roles rather than Jota or Sosa. I'm just not sure if I can trust them at this crucial stage of the Premier League season. So fingers crossed, there's still development to be had. Clearly not played an awful lot of football at this level, and they've got to settle, and it's difficult, and I understand all that sort of stuff. There's lots of context. But I think both of them have real flaws that need ironing out. There are strengths to work with, so that that gives you a bit of hope.
I think that annoys me about Jota Silva every time. If he makes a mistake or he doesn't get a decision from the referee, you can guarantee he'll go and give a free kick away straight away. Every time you think, well, he's going to give a free kick, and he did it three times last night in bad areas. Second, and you're thinking, just calm down a little bit. You can't get it right every time. But it wasn't just down to him. I thought in and around the box, our decision making as a team wasn't particularly good. Like I said before, the goalkeeper didn't have a great deal to do. He made that one good save. Everything seemed a little bit more comfortable for him. And I think we've not even mentioned Aina. We miss what he gives us as well. He gives us something so special, that lad, on a regular basis. So the people who come in have got a lot to live up to, and it's going to be difficult for them. I feel for them a little bit because they're trying to prove a point. They're trying to make Nuno say, "Oh, okay, you've got a chance here." And sometimes you can try too hard as a player, and you've got to play your natural game if you possibly can. And it's always going to be difficult against opposition from a lower league because every neutral wants an upset. They want a miracle like Plymouth did against Liverpool. So it becomes harder for the Premier League teams if they do make that many changes. But true, and like Temp said earlier, I think it'll be interesting to see if Sells does play against Ipswich. I think he should do, without a doubt. And he might bring one or two more back in because rightly so. It's fifth round. You want away from the quarterfinals. Liverpool are out. Some of the Arsenal are out. So, some of the big teams are not going to win it. So you might have a chance. And there are a lot of other teams in the Premier League might be thinking exactly the same. So it could be a good FA Cup, competition this season.
Sorry, I was just going to add really quickly, Matt. I guess it's worth saying, we're obviously picking on a couple of players here, and it's worth saying that, the players around them weren't good, were they? Even those who are settled in the team and in this country, like Yates and Dominguez, I thought they had a pretty poor night. The fullbacks were very poor, and you'd expect much better from someone like Alex Moreno, who's pretty experienced head and has played an awful lot of football at the level. So I guess it's easy to be critical of Jota and Ramon Sosa because we're desperate for them to make an impact, aren't we? And we need players who can be competition in those areas, particularly with Hudson-Odoi out. And because we don't score an awful lot of goals, we really need those options. But the players around them, I thought really, really struggled aside from a couple. And the other thing is, with Jota, we probably wouldn't be having any of these conversations had one of those moments gone in for him, and they weren't far away, were they? So I guess it's worth bearing that in mind.
Well, Pete, that you make 10 changes. Liverpool made those changes. Those 10 changes aren't used to playing with each other. You play with each other on a regular basis. So you've got 10 faces who are trying to combine to play like the team we expect them to play on a Premier League game. And Liverpool were the same. Liverpool, with all their money to spend, all their, squad, they really struggled to make an impact against Plymouth. And that is the difficult thing. You're making 10 changes. People automatically think, oh, you're a Premier League team. They're going to come in and they're going to do okay. But those 10 players aren't playing on a regular basis. We're not having a go at them. We're just trying to say, well, what could they have done better? Would Nuno think, well, I'm happy or I'm not happy? I'm talking about Liverpool as well here, not just Forest. If you make that many changes, it's so difficult to gel as a team because you haven't played together. That team that's in third place, they're playing together on a regular basis. Everybody knows what everybody else is going to do. And, when you get 10 changes, different method of playing, it's going to be difficult no matter who you play against. So you've got to cut a little bit of slack, with the players who come in. I've got a time for Jota because I think we've said there's something about him. If he gets a regular chance, he might just prove something. And though it's difficult when you're not a regular in a team to come in and all of a sudden produce magic, You know, we remember David Johnson, not David Johnson, David Fairclough, super sub, hardly played for the first team, came on, and his impact was always unbelievable. But not everybody can do that, and it's difficult. Believe me, no matter who you play against. Liverpool proved it, Exeter proved it last night. We got through. We saw the quality of the penalties last night. We picked our best 4 players, to take the 4 penalties. They were the 4 I would have picked straight away to take the 4 penalties. And, they were comfortable penalties. So let's not go too far down the road with having a go at everybody, because it's easy.
Yeah, I do agree with what Pete said about Yates and Dominguez, though, because they've had more Premier League minutes, and I think it's legit to expect more from them. It's
difficult because even though they're in there, they're playing with the rest of the first team who are doing so well this season. So it's still going to be difficult, with those two. You can't say, well, those two should be doing so much better because they're regular players. They've got, 8 other players coming in, outfield players who they've not played with. And they've got different ways of doing. They know exactly what their teammates are going to do on a Saturday with that first 11, and that makes it so much easier.
I do want to do one on the fullbacks before we move on, but just quickly, I'll throw that fullbacks one attempt. It was just before that, a word for global telemetrics. Got squeezed an extra advert in stakes. This is effectively our Monday podcast, so I appreciate everyone's patience. Here's a quick word for global telemetrics. See you in 25 seconds.
The service has been fantastic. I got the global phone number, phoned them up, and within an hour and a half, they located the vehicle and contacted me to tell me they're stood next to it. It's absolutely brilliant.
Okay. So if you was to, would you be recommending the service, and would you be recommending people to invest in securities your company's done?
I tell everyone who has any vehicle to get a tracker fitted from this company.
There you go. Some testimony from a victim of car crime there. So check out the link in the description, and you saw it on the screen there as well. So get your car secure. Right. Fullbacks, temps, just a word on them. Different ends of their career. Did it look like Moreno's probably someone who probably knows? I'm making assumptions here. Probably isn't going to be here next season. And on Moreira, does he need a loan probably to progress again, get the minutes he needs as a young kid?
Yeah, Moreira needs a loan. I think there's something in there. We were impressed with him, weren't we? When we've seen him before, that wasn't his finest hour. Yesterday, accepting everything we've said previously about conditions, the state of the pitch and everything else. I think Alex Moreno, as a lone player, we've got to treat him as such. He fought for a place with Nico Williams and lost. Nico's in there on merit now for my money. I was excited when we signed him. I thought he would maintain that place and frustrate Nico, but he hasn't. But fair play to Nuno. That's been a straight shootout, and he's allowed the best man to win. So Moreno, very useful backup for the rest of the Premier League campaign. I think that's what he's going to prove to be. But yes, Moreira needs game time. Let's get him out on loan and see how he can develop, because unlike Jota and Sosa, he is a true youngster and his career has a long way to run.
So just with one eye on the Ipswich game then, the next round, it falls. We were just discussing this a bit last night. We'll play Arsenal on a Tuesday at home. And then we'll have Ipswich on probably the Saturday, but knowing the FA, we'll have it on like 11 a.m. on a Sunday or something to get it on TV. And then we'll have a full week's break before we play Man City. So that's the context of where the game falls. How many frontline senior players right now, Pete? This might change, we're getting closer, but how many frontline senior players would you like to see play against Ipswich with a decent prize on the line, obviously, of an FA Cup quarter final?
Well, like you say, it's definitely going to change in that time. So we've got busy periods where we play Newcastle, Arsenal, Ipswich, City. It's like Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, I think we should be able to play the majority of the first team for those games, because it's not like we've had a season where we've had a lot of cup action. Obviously, we went out in the League Cup early and we've not had European games. It might be one of those periods where we just have to suck it up a little bit and accept that players are going to be playing a fair bit of football. I don't think we can pick this team again for Ipswich. I think a number of players would probably come in. It's a really good opportunity for us to progress and have a good cup run. I mean, no disrespect to Ipswich whatsoever, but we obviously could have had a draw that would have been more intimidating. There were bigger sides out there, and it's a chance, if we take it seriously, to progress. obviously much talked about, but there's a few sides missing from the competition already. So I think we need to try and take the opportunity. I mean, there are players I think from last night's team that I'd be happy playing against Ipswich. I think if Taiwo is fit, I'm more than happy with him playing and giving Chris Wood a rest and wrapping him up in cotton wool. Sangare has probably earned more minutes. There's obviously rotation to be had in central midfield because we've got a lot of options there. So whoever's not playing out of Yates, Dominguez, Danilo in that first team lineup can play in that game. I think Moreno will probably be fine if last night's performance was an aberration, and I think you're probably relatively comfortable with Bolly playing. But I think there's a few in that side that I wouldn't be so sure about, and I'd be taking it pretty seriously. So it'd be a mixed match for the Ipswich game for me, I think. I think you can make a few changes, but certainly not wholesale for me. And I think it's just going to be one of those periods where we have to hope that we get a bit of momentum from the run of games and that we can get some results in those. They're all obviously very difficult fixtures, but that we can get some results and keep the run of form going. Because the other side of that, it's all opportunity for us, isn't it? It's all games where, rightly or wrongly, Forest will be seen as the favourites or certainly very good competitors, and we're going to have to go and put the points on the board to finish this season off the way that we've had it so far.
Yeah, I mean, I would be playing, I think I said this last night, I would bring Sells in, I would bring Aina or Williams in to play right back. I'd be tempted to bring Milenkovic in, and Taiwo's fine. I think Sosa's fine, because I do think that we keep saying there's a player there, we need to give them opportunities, and as Pete said, around the midfield, I concur with that. So 4 or 5 real frontline players, maybe 5 or 6, a bit of a mix and match team. What about you, Gary? The FA Cup means so much to players. How would you go about it?
Well, you've played against Luton, you've played against Exeter, and they were the right decisions to make with the team, without a doubt. But Ipswich, because they're having the season they are in the Premier League, they might what a great opportunity for us. They're not going to play a weakened side. They'll be up thinking, right, if Forest play a weakened side, we've got a chance to go through to the 5th round of the FA Cup here. So that's the danger of that. We struggled against them at home. We only just sneaked the result. We see how difficult they are to beat. They're a team that never give up. They can they go right for 90 minutes. They press very well, and it's going to be a very difficult fixture. So it all depends how Nuno feels about the FA Cup and maybe qualifying for Europe. It's a difficult balance, and we've seen teams who've been your West Hams who've got up there, previous Villas who've got into European competitions. It becomes a little bit of a task for them. I remember Burnley when they did they had a struggle, and it's not always easy unless you've got massive squads with massive talents. So it's going to be the most interesting team selection for me. I think you've got to bring 4 or 5 back into it. What about Morata? You never mentioned him. Milenkovic. You've got to wrap those two in cotton wool a little bit because they've been the linchpins for how we've moved up the league and where we are now. So it will be a difficult one for Nuno. Running the FA Cup now, we haven't had one for quite a while, and you see that just that little glimmer of hope that we can get through maybe to a semi-final, and then anything happens because we've said already some of the top teams have gone out, so it's a good opportunity, but we want to stay in that top 5. We want to qualify for Europe, and getting that balance right is going to be a little bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll finish up on Fulham shortly. I don't disagree massively with this comment from David. If that game was at home, maybe not against Ipswich, but if that game was at home last night, I think it would have been more comfortable. So I don't want to jump to huge conclusions from it, certainly. Pete, you've got to go. You've got to take your lad to preschool. Anything you want to add before we depart, or before you depart, I should say?
No, nothing else from me. I guess we've had a hint about what we might see at Fulham with Morata not starting last night. So I guess that's perhaps where we're going. Although Nuno likes to spring a surprise as he did against Brighton last time out. But yeah, looking forward to getting back to the Premier League. Hopefully getting another good result and then going in. I mean, it's a hell of a run of fixtures, isn't it? So hopefully some opportunities for some more famous Forest moments.
Excellent. Pete's back tomorrow, so we'll do a full Fulham preview of that. But Pete, thank you very much.
Cheers, guys. All the best.
Cheers. Bye. Right. Thank you very much, Jason, for gifting one membership. Very kind of you. Much appreciated. Temps, just before we go, just on Fulham, Pete mentioned it. The other thing I was going to say, it looks like we're going to play a back three with Morato not getting any minutes. I'm perfectly on board with that. I know Gary's a fan of the back three. Just before we go, how are you feeling about that Fulham game?
We'll see the back three until Callum Hudson-Odoi's back fit. I think it's only really credible for us to play the both wingers and therefore the back four when those frontline boys are available. We've got a stockpile of players in central midfield who can impact Premier League games, and this allows us to do that. So yeah, Pete's called that. I think that's how we will line up against Fulham. All three results possible. It's one of those, isn't it? We've struggled in the past. I love that away trip to Craven Cottage, even when we got turned over and Willian terrorised us a couple of years ago. It was a great day out, but two big opportunities to put markers down on the road. Really, really difficult game to predict, and yeah, I simply don't know how to call it. I don't expect us to go there and have an easy ride. Difficult place to go. Quality players. I was trying to work out what our system and personnel is going to be in the absence of being able to put our first choice 11 out there. I don't think there's any real clue or whisper or reason to think that Callum Hudson-Odoi is in a position to start. So I expect, as Pete said, be solid, provide a good account of ourselves, back ourselves to score. Then it's about that rearguard action, which has been so strong throughout the year.
Yeah, he was back in training, I think. I mean, Hudson-Odoi could play with Elanga, and then you don't play Danilo, and then you play Anderson and Gibbs-White in midfield. We'll expand on that tomorrow. Just before I go to Gary for any final words from him, thanks very much to Vesta Blinds for supporting this episode. 3 episodes in this one, which I don't normally do, sorry, but thanks to them for their backing of the podcast. Check out the link in the description if you're looking for blinds or shutters made to measure. Gary, any final thoughts on that game or anything else you want to add before we go?
No, I just think put that game to bed last night. You know, we have to talk about it. We have to make comments about the players who come in. We've done that, but we're through to the next round. You know, just get rid of that now. We've won. You know, it was difficult. It was never going to be easy. We know that because of what Liverpool went through. Fulham, we've struggled against them in the past like we do Bournemouth, but there's got to come a time where, you know, that's got to turn around a little bit. And I think with the 3 at the back, those 3, you know, they're going to be very difficult to break down, especially with the wing backs as well. I think that system frightens teams we play against. So it'd be good to see that and try and put the last away game, you know, behind us, the 5-0. If we can do that after the 7-0, I mean, this is the craziness of football. Losing 5, winning 7. Yeah, so nothing to fear going there. Just do what we've been doing all season and we will win the game.
Hopefully so. Hopefully so. Temps, any shameless plugs? Anything you want to say before we go?
Shameless plug. Well, look, if you enjoy your cricket, check out what's coming up at Trent Bridge. Gary likes a day out. We'll get him along to England Zimbabwe or England South Africa or one of the 100 games. We've obviously just announced our partnership with Kane International and Aries. We've invested into Trent Rockets. So yeah, cricket's an exciting space at the minute, but football season's on. Let's focus on Forest and see what we can do at the weekend.
Yeah, that's Todd Bowley's company for people who don't know. So Temps is just going to go and sign his 9-year contract to be immortised in Chelsea's PSR for next season, I think, after this. Yes, so thanks very much for that. Did you want to come in there, Gary? Are you ready to come in?
Yeah, I'll mention to you when we're off air. It's just something, you know, that you might mention next time.
Oh, okay. Exciting tease. Right, we'll be back tomorrow at 2 p.m. with Pete, Greg, and Danscape, who's in the chat. If he's feeling better, I know he's had a cold, so that's the plan for then. And then we'll do a Fulham opposition preview and post-match show after that. Thanks very much to the chaps. Thanks very much to everyone who's been with us. Great to have over 500 people, 600 people, I think, at one point with us. So hit like if you haven't already. But in the meantime, if we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.